Welcome, this is Najma Minhas with Global Village Space. The last 24 to 36 hours, we're hearing from Pakistani sources that back-channel talks are happening between India and Pakistan. And as a result of these, maybe potentially Prime Minister Narendra Modi may come to Pakistan in October 2021 this year. Joining me to discuss this today is Dr. Moeed Pirzada. Moeed, you wrote a piece in the Balochistan Times on this, that we're having these talks. I mean, how long are these talks happening and why are we hearing about them now?
Najma, thank you so much. I think the most important thing to understand is that the real thing that has happened in the last 24 hours is, or 24 to 48 hours is, that highly placed Pakistani sources in Islamabad have for the first time admitted to Pakistani media, more than one Pakistani media source, at least 3 to 4, that there has been a robust process of engagement through back-channel diplomacy between Pakistani government and the Indian government, that is the Modi government, and the recent positive steps or the confidence building measures which we have seen, like the DGMO meeting in February and a ceasefire on the line of control for the first time after several years, the air passage travel facility for both the Indian and Pakistani Prime Minister, Narendra Modi's tweet, a positive tweet for Prime Minister Imran Khan, then his positive letter on 23rd Pakistan Day, and then ultimately the declaration by Pakistan's new Finance Minister Hamad Azhar that we have decided, or the Economic Coordination Committee ECC has decided to import sugar and cotton from India. All these things were happening as a result of a protracted, long, sustained process of engagement. These things were not piecemeal, and this process is still alive. And if this process continues, and if there are concessions and positive changes, a conducive atmosphere in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, if the Modi government makes concessions to Kashmiris, if it extends certain guarantees that there will not be any demographic change in the state of in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, then there was possible that Narendra Modi could have visited Pakistan. It is not a done deal, but he could have visited Pakistan to attend a SAARC summit.
Fahad Hussain in his article mentioned that these talks have started since 2018. I mean, is that your understanding? And in that case, what surprised me was that, given the fact that these talks started in 2018, how did Balakot happen then? I mean, what is the nature and the quality of these discussions that must have been happening?
I think it's a very interesting and very relevant question. And in one of my television discussion on the subject in the last 24 hours, this was actually raised by General retired Ijaz Sivan. But let me explain the background. Of course, the briefings were very similar that were given to different media groups and channels. I also heard the same. It was also in my notes which I wrote down, that a process of engagement began perhaps in London or in some European capital in August 2018. But it got rudely disrupted when the Modi government took the unilateral steps of August 2019. I wrote it down, but I did not write it in my story, which was published by Balochistan Times and subsequently was republished by the Global Village Space, which a lot of people have read, thousands of people have read. But in the Dawn story, I found that reference where Fahad Hussain mentions that. I did not mention it because I was very skeptical and very confused about that claim, because I also thought exactly the same thing, that it is not only the August 2019, 5th August 2019 happened, but if the process had started in August 2018, then within 4, 5, 6 months, the Pulwama happened, which was not something extraordinary. I mean, such attacks and instances have been happening in
but
the
still,
Indian...
you'd expect it to derail any positive talks if they were happening.
Yes, you expect, if the talks were open and if the talks were visible, if there was a process of engagement going on, then of course it would get derailed. But if there was a serious process of engagement, if both sides thought it was serious, especially if the Modi government thought that the process in which they were engaged with Pakistan was substantial, was serious, they really believed in it, then they would not have reacted by an attack inside Pakistan. They didn't attack in Azad Kashmir across the line of control. They attacked in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which was also seen as an attempt to impose a new hegemonistic order, a reset, what is called as a reset, like Israel has a reset on Iraq and Syria and Jordan. There was sort of a reset they attempted. What was the nature and quality of the engagement between Islamabad and Delhi if on the first provocation, Narendra Modi regime did something which they always wanted to do. For the past 10 or 20 years, there were demands in India that India should do what United States can do anywhere to Pakistan. And here now we hear that there was a process of engagement.
Right.
They were building trust, and suddenly the first provocation comes in the form of the Pulwama, to which the Pakistani side, cries as loud as it can that it had nothing to do with us, and the culprit or the attacker which the Indians identified was in fact a Kashmiri youth, which had been a history of massive abuse at the hand of Indian security apparatus. So I got very suspicious about this claim that there was any kind of, or otherwise we can assume that whatever the process of engagement was between Pakistan and India helped the Indian government or the Modi government to basically, they felt encouraged in somehow or the other. They thought that now, we can go ahead and do Pulwama, or we can go ahead and do Balakot, and then subsequently the 5th August 2019. So I don't think there was
So what was being discussed under these back channel talks?
So we don't really know, apart from a brief thing, that the process that started in August 2018 was focused more on India and Pakistan. And the process of engagement that began again after a hiatus in the early part of 2020 was focused more on the situation in Kashmir, and Pakistani side is demanding from India that they should give solid guarantee. First of all, they should produce an enabling environment, a conducive atmosphere and enabling environment for the talks to go ahead, for this whole engagement to progress. India must make some solid guarantees that there will not be any demographic change in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It should let political process and autonomy to Kashmiri political parties and political leadership.
Right.
Let the Kashmiri leadership travel to Pakistan and worldwide. That includes the Hurriyat leadership and the mainstream Kashmiri parties. It would resume the travel on permit for the Kashmiris from the occupied Indian Kashmir into Azad Kashmir, into parts of Pakistan, and let resume the local trade that was continuing before 2018 between Indian occupied Kashmir and Azad Kashmir. So
are the demands
and guarantees on water.
Are the demands now all revolving around Kashmir? Because I assume in 2018 there must have been different issues that were discussed.
See, this is also an interesting thing. If you look at the Indian newspapers, if you look at the Indian vlog space, Indian newspapers, look at Shekhar Gupta's very interesting vlog. So you see a unanimity of the Indian opinion that the dialogue is being sought by the Pakistani side, because Pakistani side is troubled economically, it is surviving on IMF bailouts, it is very hard hit by the pandemic, the economy has no real growth, it is, Pakistan is also troubled by FATF, which Indians can very proudly claim that they pushed Pakistan into Financial Action Task Force. So it is a Pakistan that is beleaguered, which is breathing very difficulty, and it needs a breathing space from India. And when you look at the theories that the line of control tensions have been used by Narendra Modi as a sort of an economic coercion against Pakistan, that if India can spend $2 billion on line of control, Pakistan is also spending more than $1 billion each year to fight back on the line of control. So Pakistanis are tired, fatigued, hard pressed by the Indian pressure, and they're seeking a resumption of dialogue with India. Now, what the Pakistani sides are now claiming, on the other hand, it is Moeed Yusuf 5 months ago, Dr. Moeed Yusuf, NSA, when he appeared in an interview with Karan Thapar, he said that Indians have been approaching us and hinting that we can offer concessions in Kashmir. So the dialogue is coming from the Indian side, which makes sense. And this is now what the official.
Why does it make sense to you? What do you think the Indians get out of it?
Because India is the status quo power in Jammu and Kashmir. India is a larger party in South Asia. Modi government has achieved what it wanted ideologically to achieve. It had its commitment ideologically, BJP and RSS, that they will change the status of Jammu and Kashmir. It is a two-tongue. It will become part of the formal India. They wanted to end the status. They wanted to end Article 370 and 35A. It was their electoral pledge. Now, since they have achieved what they wanted to achieve, they think they have more space. They can make concessions. And I think the Pakistani sources that spoke to us in Islamabad also believe this thing, that we have made it clear to India that, look, the responsibility of making progress and forward moves depend upon you. If you make the progress, if you achieve these results in Kashmir, then this process can continue.
But you're saying that India under BJP has achieved what it wants, which is the BJP's belief that Kashmir should be part of India. Yet that's what Pakistan wants. Pakistan wants some autonomy for Kashmir. So where are they going to meet halfway, the two of them?
I think if you look at this actually brings us to a question that what Modi government needs by engaging Pakistan. And it is not very difficult to understand what Modi government needs from Pakistan. What Pakistan needs from Modi government is more complex, is less clear. What can Pakistan get from Modi government, given the mood and the behavior of the Modi regime, the RSS and BJP and everything. But Modi government needs three kind of things from Pakistan. One which Pakistanis are aware of is that they need to improve their image, which is battered because of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, which is battered because of the Citizen Amendment Act and protest in Delhi and other parts of India, the treatment of minorities that is being reported by Western media, and the recent farmers' protest has also given them very bad face, especially in the United States, where the non-resident Indians and Sikh community across UK, Canada and Australia and United States also protest on it. So, and they also realize this thing, the Biden administration wants to engage Narendra Modi at a very high and robust level to push India into Quad against China.
How does Pakistan fit into all this?
So they need a cessation of hostilities with Pakistan to create better optics, better atmospheres in the region, so that the Biden administration is unfettered, feels confident to engage them. Maybe this is an American demand as well. We can talk more about it. But there is a second and third point. There is a second point as well, which Pakistanis do understand, which Indian sources talk very often, their analysts talk, that India from 2020 June onwards, after the Ladakh skirmishes with China, finds itself pressured in a two-front situation between a hostile Pakistan and a hostile China, and China is of course a huge challenge for India. And some sources also tell us, the Pakistani ex-military sources told me that India's defense apparatus and machine at the moment is very thinly spread, is very stretched, because they have moved large number of forces in areas in the north where and heavy machinery, heavy equipment, and the whole concept of rest and recreation, R&R, or where forces are deployed, they're in resting phase. That's all disrupted in the Indian military concept at the moment. But there's a third factor which has not been heard and which has not been talked. No one in the Pakistani media has ever thought about it, No one, there's no Pakistani paper, no editorial, no newspaper, no television program. That is the pressure the Kashmiri mainstream regional parties created for the BJP. This is not a challenge for India. It's very important to distinguish between India and BJP's needs over here. There is a Gupkar alliance that was created immediately on 4th of August 2019 at the residence of Dr. Farooq Abdullah. His residence is called Gupkar Residence on Gupkar Road in Srinagar. So they immediately, 7 parties, and at that time when this alliance was created, this declaration was formed, the Indian National Congress, which is of course the second mainstream party in India, was also part of the Gupkar declaration. Though it subsequently distanced itself. After a few weeks it said that we're not part of the declaration and the alliance. But a Gupkar declaration or alliance was created in August 2019 that immediately demanded that we want the autonomy which we had in the Indian constitution. They're not against Indian constitution. They're not against the Indian state. They're supported by the Indian civil society, by Indian National Congress, by Indian NGOs, by non-resident Indians. They resonate very well.
And this is threatening the BJP?
This is a direct threat for BJP's actions of August 5th, because Gupkar alliance now, which is of 6 Kashmiri parties, now it's left only 5 Kashmiri parties, have won. First of all, they demanded that actions of 5th August, 4th August, 5th August should be put an end to. And we want a restoration of the Article 370, 35A. In fact, they said we want autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir, which we had before 1953. They're going back that much. And when they said these things, interestingly, they were supported by several mainstream political parties, including the Indian National Congress, on this demand. And to this day, no doubt, notwithstanding the fact that Indian National Congress in November of 2019 distanced itself from the Gupkar.
Is this a maximalist position that they've chosen as well? Because 1953 is well before even the Abdullah and Indira Gandhi agreement as well
I
in
agree.
the 70s.
I agree. No, but look, going back to 1953 can be a maximalist position, right? They can have a maximalist position, but demanding that Article 370 and 35A should be brought back and we should be given a statehood structure is not a maximalist position. And if this is supported by Indian civil society, powerful sections of the Indian media, if this is supported by Indian National Congress, if this is supported by the NGOs, if this resonates well with the pro-democracy NGOs worldwide, then it is a problem for the BJP. But this is not the only thing. Then comes the election of November-December 2020, in which Gupkar declaration of 6 parties turns itself into PAGD, which means People's Alliance or Public Alliance for Gupkar Declaration.
Okay.
PAGD. So PAGD becomes a political electoral alliance for the local government elections, which is DDC, that is the District Development Council elections of November and December 2020, in which Gupkar Alliance takes the 110 to 112 seats in Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory, which is now Union Territory, but they sweep all of Kashmir Valley. Not only this, they also managed to get 35 seats in the Muslim belt of Chenab Valley in Jammu. Now, it emerges as a major political challenge. Now, ask why it is a major political challenge. Because it's not a separatist alliance. It is not saying that Kashmir should be given freedom and separation from India. It basically affirms Indian constitution. It wants and agitates its rights within the Indian constitutional framework from Indian civil society. It gets support from Indian National Congress. Even in November 2020, while Congress was not a part of the Gupkar alliance, Congress nevertheless came up. P. Chidambaram, a spokesperson of Congress, said that we welcome this electoral alliance and we basically support their demands.
So it's a threat to the BJP because it's coming from within the system.
One last point, it's a threat to Narendra Modi's actions and BJP's actions in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It is not a threat to the state of India or to the Federation of India, which makes a complex situation for Pakistan. If you look at the Pakistani media and sources, they're all silent on the Gupkar alliance or the Gupkar declaration. They still talk of Hurriyat leadership, Hurriyat conference. But Pakistan has to make a decision. Are we with the Kashmiris and with the future, or we will continue to align ourselves with our limited, narrow interests which we have peddled for the past 30 plus years. So Pakistan has to look at holistically at the situation that is evolving in the Jammu and Kashmir.
So you very clearly explained the 3 reasons why India needs Pakistan to talk. And you mentioned in your Balochistan Times article about this potential possible visit by Narendra Modi to Pakistan during the SAARC summit. Do you think that will still go ahead after what's happened on the cabinet revoking the ECC's decision? I mean, has that put a stop? Has it put a stop in the works?
I'm glad that you said a potential, possible. Yes, it was always in the brief. We have been briefed by highly placed sources that it was a possibility. It was never a done deal. It is not that Narendra Modi side or Narendra Modi had confirmed or said that he will definitely come, but perhaps during the process of engagement, one fruit was that Indian Prime Minister can come and revive the stuck process of the SAARC summit, which for the past several years has not really taken place.
2016 it was supposed to happen in Pakistan and it didn't because of the Indians' intransigence at the time.
And Narendra Modi had already assumed power in 2014.
Yeah.
So as long as the Congress was there, SAARC was functioning in one or the other way. In fact, till 2013 and early 2014, Congress was very gung-ho and very eager for the SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement. And unfortunately, in March of 2014, because of the pressure from the potential electoral, BJP's potential election success, a non-resident Indian arrived from New York into Islamabad, met Nawaz Sharif, Ishaq Dar and Sartaj Aziz and impressed upon them and gave a message of Narendra Modi and said that you should not give the going away Congress, which is party, a victory in the form of the trade agreement, which was then called as the non-discriminatory market access for India.
Right.
They
felt it would help Congress in the elections if
and
Pakistan
they said we need to create an internal consensus on the issue of trade with Pakistan. But since then, when the Narendra Modi assumed power in 2014, the hostilities have only increase between India and Pakistan. So the whole process is stuck. So if Narendra Modi comes and kickstarts the SAARC summit, it can be a huge success. But I don't think Narendra Modi will be able to come for the SAARC summit because I think the cat is out of the bag. I think the Hamad Azhar.
What do we need for it to happen? I mean, I know that yesterday, for example, Zafar Hilali Saab, Ambassador Zafar Hilali tweeted that the kind of protests that Modi will get in Pakistan far outweigh anything he saw in Dhaka, right? So what do we need to show the Pakistani population that we have achieved this as Pakistan from India to enable Modi Saab to come to Pakistan?
I think that Zafar Hilali has taken a little bit stronger position. I don't think that Narendra Modi, first of all, I don't think that Bangladesh kind of reaction will take place in Pakistan on the visit of Narendra Modi. There will be a reaction from religious parties, whatever, but the Bangladesh reaction has a very deep-seated emotional element to it. No such emotional element exists in Pakistan. It is for the reason that now defunct Jamaat-e-Islami, which has been a major political party, Islamist political party in Bangladesh, feels itself a victim of the Indian intervention into Bangladeshi politics through the Shadbagh movement, as a result of which the party was declared, was defunct, was banned, and several of its leadership were basically tried and then hanged. So it's a very wounded element, and all the protests which we saw in Bangladesh were because of the Jamaat-e-Islami. There is no such real factor, wounded factor, to the extent in Pakistan. But yet there will be protests by maybe Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan and Jamaat-e-Islami.
So what tangible effects do we need to take place before that happens?
First of all, I'm very skeptical if this happens, but I think that unless Narendra Modi government makes substantive concession in a very visible fashion in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, something to undo, even if they don't undo the actions of August 5th, they don't bring back the Article 370 and 35A, they can still take series of steps. Like for instance, they have already come up. The interesting thing is, the BJP created a proxy party called Apni Party in the November-December 2020 local government elections, which has been beaten very badly because everybody knew it was a BJP proxy. But Apni Party came up with the demand that we want statehood to be restored, whereas the Gupkar Alliance and the Congress were saying that bring back Article 370 and 35A. BJP itself planted the idea that instead of Article 370A, we can give back the state status to Jammu and Kashmir, and then there was talk of giving them Article 370A to 371.
Is this the one that the northeastern states have?
Yes, about 8 to 9 Indian states have that special status, which gives them immunity and protection against any kind of demographic change, though I think central investments or non-state investments can still take place. So BJP planted the idea. So BJP is already ready to move ahead with this thing. Pakistani side can on optics claim that the BJP has made those concessions of statehood, and guarantees against
on their pressure.
Right. And if the Modi government allows travel right to Kashmiris to Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, maybe students study in Azad Kashmir universities, which was a facility perhaps previously available to them, the cross-border trade between Azad Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir, and guarantees on some other guarantees on water, for instance, which Pakistan is very concerned about. Then there can be optics. I'm not very hopeful that these optics will take place. I don't think the Modi government will be able to make these concessions at such a speed. We are already in October, we are already in April, and it's only 6 months away. And I think the way Indian system works, it is possible in Pakistan that you can take several steps without really clearly thinking about the implications. It is not possible in India that you make concessions to Pakistan in rapid sequence. That would not work in India. In Pakistan, Hamad Azhar can sit and do a press conference without any political background and suddenly say that we have decided to open up trade with India. This is not something that can happen in India. I remember in November 2019, when Prime Minister of Pakistan, in his usual exuberance, made a tweet and said on the Kartarpur that we can let the people, as many people can come without the documents and passports and everything. Within few hours, the Indians came back and said, no, this is not acceptable. The standard process of carrying the passports and documents has to be there, and there can be no border crossing without the proper documentation.
No, but if Prime Minister Modi Saab was maybe potentially evaluating coming in October, there must have been certain steps that the Indian government must have been thinking that we will actually allow before coming over. He can't have been thinking of coming in a vacuum.
Of course, I mean, I think that's an intelligent guess, but what we have seen so far, we are told that this process is continuing for the past more than 1 year, or maybe started in 2018, but again resumed in early part of 2020. So the only concrete thing, the only substantial thing that has emerged is the DGMO meeting in February of 2021 and renewal of the 2003 ceasefire, which was in fact a Pakistani initiative under the Musharraf government, right? Nothing else. All others are superficial, very light kind of optics, like Narendra Modi doing a tweet or writing a letter, or Imran Khan writing a letter, or giving airspace. I mean, these are meaningless things. So the only real thing has happened, and there too, we have reason to believe that this ceasefire between the DGMO's meeting is more to do with military to military dynamics, in the sense that both military structures were tired of this endless, ceaseless firing on each other. I mean, as we hear that India had spent in 2020 alone close to $2 billion, 14,000 crore Indian rupee, and Pakistan has spent more than $1 billion. So yes, the militaries were exhausted, they have found respite, but I have also reason to believe that without a political framework and political movement, perhaps the ceasefire may not last indefinitely. So nothing substantial has happened on the ground in the last, say, more than a year, right? So how can we expect more quick movements on the ground?
We thank you so much for your time. I'm hoping until October we still have a long time to go, so let's see. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.